Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're on chapter 20, verse 2, the beginning of the Ten Commandments. And we left off with this question last time. So, I am Hashem, your God, who took you out of Egypt. That's a big deal. From the house of slaves. Why does he have to say from the house of slaves? We know what the story was in Egypt? So, if you look at the Ramban, it's it's the third paragraph of the Ramban on Pasuk base. It's probably about 15 lines into the Ramban. V'tam mi beis avodim. They were in Egypt, in a house of servants, captives of Paro. V'amar lahem zeh lemor, shem chayavim, sheyiyah Hashem hagadol lenichbar v'anora hazeh lelokim lohem. Hashem reminds them that they were slaves in Egypt, and not just slaves, but bound to Paro. And therefore, it's only logical that Hashem should be a God for them, sheyavduhu, that they should serve him. Kiupada osam me'avdus Mitzrayim. They were slaves in Egypt, and God redeems them from this. Kitam ki avodai heim asher hotzesi osam me'eretz Mitzrayim. Elsewhere in the Torah, it says, "They are my servants. I took them out of Egypt." Faramasti od lamala tam shnei Hashemos hakadosh. Okay. This directive of realizing that I am Hashem, your God, is what's called Kabbalas Malchus Shamayim. We talk a lot about this, the acceptance of the yoke of heaven. These types of things that we're thinking about are the way a nation would relate to a king. And the Medrash says, Lo yeh lecha Elohim achirim lama alpanai lama nemar. It says Hashem should be our God. So why does it have to say don't have other gods? So the Medrash says, imagine a king entered a country. Amrlo avadav, his servants say to him, Gzor aleinu gzeiros. The residents of the country say, great king, give us decrees. Tell us what you want from us. Amar lahem, the king says back to them, Lav, no, I'm not going to. Presumably, this is sort of like an emperor type of thing with many, many countries under his control. And he enters a country, maybe it's a country that just recently entered his dominion. They say, give us decrees. He says, no. You first have to accept me as your king. I'm not going to make decrees that maybe you're interested in, maybe you're not interested in. Because if you don't accept my kingdom, how will you accept my decrees? And therefore, God says to the Jewish people, the first two commandments, I'm Hashem, your God, you shouldn't have other gods. I am the one that you accepted my kingdom upon you in Egypt. Do you accept that I'm the one who took you out of Egypt? Amrulo hein. The Jewish people said, yes, we accept it. Kishem shekibalta malchusi. Now that you accept my kingdom over you, then kablu gzeirosai. Then you should accept my decrees. Klomar, that is to say, achar shatem mekablu aleichem, being that you accept upon yourselves, umodim shani Hashem, you agree that I'm God, v'ani elokechem me'eretz Mitzrayim, and you realize that I'm your God back from the times of Egypt, kablu kol mitzvosai. It's incumbent upon you to accept all of my mitzvos. Just interesting to think about all this. V'nemru kol adibros kulan b'lashon yachid. What an interesting thing. The grammar in these psukim is in the singular. I am Hashem Elokecha. You over there. You one person, I'm your God. It's not Ani Hashem Elokechem. I'm your collective God. It's speaking to each person as an individual. It's interesting because he's speaking to the nation. So maybe the grammar should be in the plural. I'm all of your God. It doesn't say that. Elokecha asher hotzesicha. I'm your singular God that took you singular out of Egypt. In the psukim leading up to the giving of the Torah, the messages relayed to the Jewish people are in the plural. And all of a sudden here, when it actually gets to the Ten Commandments, it's in the singular. Lahazir, this is to urge people, ki kol yachid mehem ye'anesh ala mitzvos. Each and every one of us are responsible for the observance of the mitzvos, and if we don't do them, we could be punished. Ki im kol echad yidaber. God is not speaking to the collective group. It's not, well, we'll try to have 80% of the people recognize God. We'll try to have, 75% of the people, not steal, so on and so forth. That's not what this is. Ulkol echad yitzaveh. God is commanding each and every one of us. It's not enough to be part of a group that, broadly speaking, is keeping the mitzvahs. They shouldn't think that it's based on the majority. As long as the majority of the Jews are doing the right things, individuals can skate by. And then the Ramban says that's why in Parshas Nitzavim, near the end of the Torah, Moshe tells the Jewish people, Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem l'fnei Hashem Elokechem. You're all standing before Hashem, your God. It's bringing home this same point that's being made in the Sefer Dibros, that it speaks in the singular. Interesting to think about. Okay, let's go on to verse 5. Talking about not having other gods. Lo sishtachav Elohem v'lo sa'avdein. Don't bow to them, don't serve them. Ki anochi Hashem Elokecha kel kana. I am Hashem, your God. Kel kana seems to translate as a jealous God. That the punishments of generations carry for generations. You ever wonder, we actually use this term a lot, that God is a jealous God. What in the world does that mean? It's a little bit of a difficult phrase when you think about it. What does it mean that God is jealous? Jealous of whom exactly? And right now I'm trying to find this Ramban. Hold on one second. Hold on. Okay, I marked it. Second. Gosh, this is frustrating. Give me one more second. Sorry. It's a pretty lengthy Ramban, so I noted a specific paragraph. Sorry to keep you waiting. Oh, okay. Got it. Sorry. Okay, it's about 15 lines into the Ramban on Pasuk Hey. Ulafidati, my opinion is, Ki yaskir kina b'avodah zarah b'Yisrael b'lvada. Very interesting thing. He says you will not find, every human being is prohibited from worshiping idols, right? That's one of the Noachide laws. It's not just Jews. And even though in the context of not worshiping other gods, God refers to himself as a jealous God, it only talks about God as a jealous God when it comes to the Jews worshiping other gods. But when it comes to other people worshiping other gods, even though they're also prohibited from worshiping other gods, it doesn't refer to God as jealous. V'tam hakina, the meaning of this jealousy is, Ki Yisrael skulas Hashem anichbad, asher hivdilam lo. The Jewish people are the special nation of Hashem, that he separated us specifically to serve him. V'nei im ha'am shalo meshorsav ponim Elohim achirim. His chosen nation, if his chosen nation turns to other gods, yikane Hashem bahem, then God will have jealousy, meaning, imagine a married couple, and one of the members of the marriage goes and has relations with someone else, is unfaithful. There's a jealousy, not a jealousy, oh, I wish I had what someone else has. It's an anger because it's a breaking of the essential bond between these two parties. That's what it means that God is a Kel Kana. Doesn't mean that God is sitting there wanting to be the most popular God around. That's not what it means. What it means is that God is a special bond with Klal Yisrael, and when Klal Yisrael turns to other gods, it's a violation of the relationship. This is an interesting pshat, what it means that God is a jealous God, and a very interesting observation from the Ramban, that it only talks about God as a jealous God in the context of the Jewish people not doing what we're supposed to do. Okay. we get through the first 5 of the commandments, and then if you look at verse 13, we have kind of a rapid fire. Lo sirtzach, don't kill. Lo sinaf, don't commit adultery. Lo signov, don't steal, which actually is understood to mean kidnapping. Lo sa'anev shaker, don't testify falsely against your friend. Lo sachmod beis reacha, and that there's other things. Don't be jealous of items belonging to your friend. It's just a really interesting thing to try to get a handle on why these prohibitions made the list. There's a lot of really bad things. There's many, many prohibitions. So, okay, these are interpersonal prohibitions. There's many interpersonal prohibitions. Why specifically these 5? So if you look at the Ramban and Pasuk Yud, Lo sirtzach, lo sinaf, lo signov, Amar, Hinei tzvi sicha lahodos, shani borei hakol, belev of masa. I have commanded you to accept, both in your hearts and in your actions, that I am the creator of all. This is what it means that Hashem, I am Hashem, your God. Ulachabed ha'avos, bavur shem mishtatvim bayitzira. There's famous thing, right, that the 5th of the 10 commandments is honoring one's parents, and it's on the side that has to do with our relationship with God, because God says that your parents partnered with me in creating you. Imkain hishamer pentachabel masa yodai v'sishboch dam ha'adam. So if you believe that this whole world was created by God, and if you believe that every person in this world is created by God, then it's logical to prohibit murder. Because if you kill someone, you're tampering with my creation, says God. Asher barasini l'chvodi. I created this person because I had an idea of what this person would accomplish in this world. V'lo sinaf eishes riacha, and don't commit adultery. Ki sachvol inyan kibud ha'avos, lachbar be'emes u'lahodos b'sheker, ki lo yedu asaviyam v'itnu kvodim la'achir. It's a fundamental thing for a child to honor their parents. If you commit adultery, you will create confusion, whether the people even know it or not, as to who is and isn't their parents. And so now there's this sacred thing that I told you about in the 5th of the commandments. If you commit adultery, you might bring that whole issue into confusion. That's the next instruction. Then there's a prohibition for kidnapping. To kidnap is to take away this sacred dynamic within a family. He says, so the sequence is as follows. So we have idol worship. Then a little bit later on, we have murder. Then we have illicit sexual relations. Then it talks about kidnapping and false testimony. Umi shelo yachmod lo yazik liolam lachavero. And if we don't covet things that belong to other people, we'll never do anything wrong to our friend. It's a fascinating thing that the 10th of the commandments is lo sachmod, and that the idea is that all these things that we're talking about with how we act with each other, it's about an idea, and the idea is lo sachmod. Don't be jealous. It clarified all the things that a person is obligated in terms of their dynamics with other people. And then we get into specific laws, and that's the rest. That's what we begin with Parshas Mishpatim. It's just an interesting way to look at the sequence of the 10 Commandments. So we discussed the idea of why God says, I took you out of the house of slaves. We discussed why the Seres and Dibros are in the singular. We discussed the idea of what it means to be a jealous God, and we discussed a little bit of a deeper understanding as to what the 10 Commandments are and why they're in this order, etc.